So let's look at our next quick win. Sometimes just having Azure Active Directory in the cloud will not be enough. Sometimes you need to take that same Active Directory server that you have on premise and have a copy of it deployed in the cloud. Now, why would you need to do that, and how could it potentially help you? Well, let's look at 4 scenarios. The first one, and the simplest one, is to improve resiliency. Domain controllers can operate in groups, and so the identities and accounts that are in one domain controller automatically replicate to a second and a third and a fourth one. If I make a change in any of them, that change is also replicated. And then if any of my servers goes down, something happens to the actual server, the second, third, fourth, fifth, etc. domain controller can reply. And so if I have a domain controller in the cloud, that can allow for some additional resiliency if, say, I have a physical site that goes down because of a fire or a flood or whatever it may be. My employees' sign-ins and all the services that that domain controller provides can still run. Now, we mentioned services that domain controller provides, and that's another topic we want to get in, because domain controllers don't just host accounts, usernames, and passwords. They can also perform configuration management, where we ensure that new computers that are added to my office network have a certain configuration. And they can perform group policy enforcement, where similarly, I will ensure that all the devices that are joined to my office network have certain security and compliance features enabled. Now, some of this I can do with Azure Active Directory and tools such as Intune or Endpoint Manager, but especially when it comes to complex deployments or when it comes to management of servers, then the Azure AD toolset does not cover them. And so we will need to deploy a AD server to the cloud in order to be able to perform these configurations to, say, cloud resources. Another service that Active Directory can provide is to provide that authentication for applications that may be hosted in the cloud and that maybe don't support single sign-on features. Or maybe I have an application that doesn't directly use sign-on. It's a legacy application like, say, QuickBooks or Sage 50. And so the way I've hosted it in the cloud is I've just deployed a server where it's installed and users remotely access that server. Well, for users to sign into that server, I may want them to use their on-premise, the same user and password set that they already use to log into their local Windows machine, because there may be permissions, there may be compliance features, there may be a host of configurations that are already set up for that on-premise identity. So by deploying a domain controller to the cloud, I can ensure that that cloud server where QuickBooks is installed, for instance, is able to support that same feature set, those same security features, those same compliance features that I have in my on-premise office network. And finally, a very good reason to have a domain controller in the cloud is if I'm looking at the long term and at larger deployments in the future, because many other cloud features and solutions require a domain controller to be deployed. For instance, one push we've seen is for Windows Virtual Desktop. And what is Windows Virtual Desktop or Azure Virtual Desktop? It's where instead of having my employees, especially remote employees, work from personal devices, I say, no, when you log into your personal device, you're going to click this link. That link is going to open a cloud computer, a virtual computer. And it's in that cloud computer, in that virtual space, that you're going to do all your work, because that space is controlled by my corporate IT department. That space does have all the security and compliance features that I need applied to it, in contrast to, say, a personal device. So a Windows Virtual Desktop deployment or an Azure Virtual Desktop deployment would also, in many cases, benefit from having a domain controller in the cloud. So being able to deploy this to maybe start with supporting legacy applications or to start with improving resiliency can then also serve as a foundation for future cloud work. Well, again, what's it going to cost me? Well, the price here is going to be a bit higher. We may want to keep that synchronization with Azure Active Directory, so we'll keep that first line there for Azure Active Directory. However, if we're going to deploy a domain controller to the cloud, we'll need 2 additional things. We'll need, of course, that server where the domain controller is going to be run. And these servers don't typically have to be large servers, so Server with a single CPU and 4 gigs of RAM should be enough for most small business scenarios. Larger corporations, your mileage may vary. And we're also going to need to be able to connect my cloud network to my office network. So the computers on both places have to be able to see each other and to communicate with each other. And to do that, we use what's called a VPN gateway. And so all in all, considering the costs, if I have Microsoft 365 Business Premium, I'd be looking at about $130 a month. If I don't have it, then of course we'd have to add that $300 Azure Active Directory 50 user account. That would bring it up to around $430 a month. The benefit is that these solutions, both of the identity solutions we've looked at so far, are solutions that can be deployed very, very quickly. In a matter of a week, these things can be up and running. And so they're quick and easy ways for your organization to get started or to continue developing your cloud presence. And they provide immediate benefits in terms of resiliency, security, and additional protection for your company.